This is the Thunderobot Radiant 16, a highly capable, budget-conscious gaming laptop that you probably haven't heard about until now. Is it any good? Is it worth the $1699 price tag? And most importantly, does it push pixels so that you can have an actual enjoyable gaming experience, whether you're playing the latest FPS games or setting a new record in Forza Horizon 6? Let's find out. So this is the Thunderobot Radiant 16. They've been around for a while, but admittedly much more popular overseas than here in the US. If we take a look at the spec sheet though, on paper, it seems like it should be just as popular over here. Thunderobot were kind enough to send me this particular model of the Radiant 16 that features the 14th gen i9-14900HX, which is a 24-core, 32-thread CPU that is one of the fastest mobile CPUs out there, which can handle anything from gaming, 3D modeling, and rendering as well. It also features 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM running at 4800 megatransfers per second. So it's not the fastest DDR5 out there, but it's enough to get the job done. You get a 1TB Gen 4 NVMe for storage and an RTX 5060 with 8 gigabytes of video memory, giving you access to DLSS 4 and multi-frame gen technology if you choose to utilize it. I personally only turn on DLSS 4, but you have both of those options if you want to utilize them. I think first impressions are very important, so here's my thoughts upon initially unboxing this laptop. The design was geared towards gamers, but not so much that it's overboard. It's not like a futuristic transformer trying to do too much. It seems to be made of a thick plastic that has rigidity, not a flexible cheap plastic where you throw it in your backpack and you have to worry about it breaking or warping. It's pretty dense too. It's got some weight to it and subtle branding with the Thunderobot power button and typical RGB keyboard you'd expect to find on a gaming laptop. You could easily double this thing up and have it pass as a beefy work laptop, not looking like you're about to go to your buddy's local LAN party. Although I'm always down for a LAN party. If we open up the lid, it features a 16-inch display, which is a great size for me when looking at a laptop, especially one that I'll be gaming on. You get a QHD Plus panel, which is 2560 by 1600 and 300 hertz. Yes, 300 hertz. That's even better than my monitor at my current gaming desk setup. Now you might think, that's interesting, 300 hertz, yet it's only got an RTX 5060. I said the same thing myself, but we'll touch a little bit more on that during the benchmarking. The panel has solid brightness at 500 nits, colors look accurate out of the box, and the 16:10 aspect ratio gives you a bit more vertical real estate than the typical 16:9 gaming panel, which I can honestly appreciate. If we look at the keyboard, this one features a numpad, which I know some people don't care about, but I'm a sucker for a 10 key. And anyone who uses a laptop as a primary machine and does any kind of spreadsheet work or number entry, having that numpad is a quality of life thing that not every gaming laptop chooses to include at this size. The trackpad is fine, nothing spectacular, but this is a gaming laptop. So if you're using the trackpad for anything serious in gaming, we need to have a different conversation here. Let's jump into the Radiant 16's port selection, and one of my biggest pet peeves is that so many of these brands are obsessed with making the lightest and thinnest laptop they can. Meanwhile, I, and I'd assume most of you, would sacrifice that for a little bit more bulk to have the I/O that we actually want without needing to have to connect an adapter or a dock. On the Radiant 16, you get 3 USB-A 3.1 ports, 1 USB-C 3.1 Gen 2, an HDMI 2.1 port, a dedicated Ethernet port, which is great because while Wi-Fi is convenient, plugging in that Ethernet is still king when it comes to gaming. A headphone jack and the power connector. Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth are on board as well, which is a complete loadout. Nothing's missing, nothing that's gonna make you go hunting for a dock on day one. You certainly can if you're needing more I/O, but you should be good to go right out of the box. I think it's very worth mentioning that there are multiple SKUs of the Thunderobot Radiant 16. So if you want more storage or RAM, they do offer it in a 16GB and 64GB DDR5 variant, up to an RTX 5080, and up to a 4TB SSD. But with current memory and storage prices being so astronomical, you're really jumping yourself out of that budget laptop range and you know, more of a premium selection at that point. I also want to mention they have a full lineup of laptop offerings like the Storm 17, which looks to be their entry-level gaming laptop, and also the Zero Pro, which is their flagship. But let's move on to cooling. And this is where a lot of budget laptops can cut corners and things fall apart significantly. Thunderobot is running dual 12-volt turbofan coolers, 60mm fans each, with 0.2mm copper fins, 245 of them, and multi-directional exhaust. That is an aggressive thermal solution for a laptop of this size. The idea is that thinner fins means that you can pack more of them into the same space, which means more surface area for heat dissipation. On paper, that's the right approach, but but we'll see in practice if those thermals actually hold up while it's fully under load and we're gaming. One thing I want to flag that tripped me up during the initial setup is if you want the display running at its full 300 Hz, you need to go into the Control Center software that's kindly preloaded onto the desktop and enable dedicated GPU direction connection mode. It requires a restart, but it's not difficult. But it's also not automatic out of the box. If you buy one of these and the display doesn't feel as smooth as you expected, that's the first thing to check. All right, it's finally benchmarking and game time. We're gonna be trying out Forza Horizon 6, Battlefield 6, Subnautica 2, and Counter-Strike 2. A good mix of modern shooters and open world games to give us a good visual mix. Starting with Battlefield 6, we're gonna be testing all games at 2560 by 1600 resolution at both high and low graphics with DLSS 4 on and off. This is a great first stress test as Battlefield 6 is genuinely demanding. You got large maps, destructible environments, particle effects everywhere, explosions, smoke, a lot of things happening at the screen. So Battlefield 6 is tough, real tough on a gaming system. We're starting off with 2560 by 1600 low settings, and we're seeing about mid to the upper 70s for FPS, sometimes cracking into the 80s with GPU utilization consistently above 90%. It still feels really smooth and playable, but definitely crushing this thing. Moving on to high, we see a decent drop in FPS down into the 50s with almost 96 to 98% GPU utilization. Again, still totally playable, but for Battlefield 6, you're not going to get anywhere near the 300 Hz the screen can handle, but this was expected. Now let's go ahead and turn on DLSS performance and try low and see the difference. Thankfully, we are above the 100 FPS threshold now and feeling even more smooth. The graphics still look great, and we're getting anywhere from a 20 to 30 FPS increase. DLSS 4 with high settings, we also see a nice jump into the mid 60s, low 70s, so not as big a jump as low, but still about a 20 FPS increase. Moving on to Forza Horizon 6, a very well optimized game. I think we're gonna have much better luck here. On low, with no DLSS 4 turned on, we're seeing anywhere from the low 120s to upper 130s. This feels really nice on a racing game like Forza. It's a big open world map as well, so I'm really happy with these numbers, and the graphics still look good. Moving on to high, we're still floating at right about 100 FPS, but the main thing is with this game, the graphics don't look drastically different with the jump between low and high, so I would probably keep it on low and get that extra FPS boost. I know it doesn't really matter on a racing game compared to an FPS, but still. Turning on DLSS 4 on low, and this might shock you, it actually doesn't do hardly anything, and really it looks like a few less FPS, which is kind of shocking. But I have noticed that in the past, the new DLSS model on some games just isn't even worth it. On high settings with DLSS 4 performance mode on, same thing really, upper 100s for FPS, so it's a little bit of a jump, but nothing like you'd usually expect when turning it on. Game still looks good though overall, and performs really well on this Radiant 16. CS2 time. You can't use MSI Afterburner overlay, so we're using the built-in FPS counter. You'll see it in the top left of the screen, and we're on low. We're finally reaching our 300 FPS and getting every bit of performance out of this laptop screen. Anywhere from high 290s to mid 320s, it feels very smooth, and it actually looks pretty decent on low as well. Bumping it up to high, we do lose a good chunk of FPS. We're down to the upper 170s to 190s, which is still good and it feels very smooth, but with an FPS, more is always better, but the graphics do look fantastic on high. Now CS2 doesn't support DLSS for some reason, who knows if it's coming, but they do have FSR, so we'll turn that on. On low, pretty close to before, more consistently in the 300s, but around 300 to 320-ish FPS. On high though, we did see a nice little bump at 230 to around 250-ish with FSI turned on, so a solid increase of roughly 50 plus FPS. I would have liked to test DLSS 4, but oh well. Lastly, Subnautica 2, same thing with CS2. For some reason, I couldn't enable the MSI overlay for FPS, so we had to use NVIDIA's overlay for FPS benchmarking. Running at low, we're looking around 105 to 100 FPS. Kind of thought it would run a bit smoother, but that's where we landed. And for high, we got a little bit of a dip at around 70 to 75 FPS. I was honestly looking for a little bit more. I mean, I really was. Let's see if DLSS helps at all. On low with DLSS performance enabled, we squeaked out a little more FPS, up now to like like 110 to 115, so a little jump, but nothing too significant, and the same goes for high. We're touching the 80s now, but really only a 5 to 10 FPS difference. Overall though, perfectly fine for a game like Subnautica 2. Overall, I think not shockingly, the 5060 is going to excel in games like CS2, Valorant, and Fortnite, but on more open world and demanding games, you're still going to see a decent frame rate, but about what you would expect from an RTX 5060, definitely still playable. We can't forget to talk about thermals and fan noise because I think this is where budget laptops live and die in the real world. Under sustained gaming load, I'm talking 30 minutes to an hour of gaming, not just, a 5-minute session. CPU temps were sitting right around 90 to 98 C, which sounds high, but this CPU can run at that temperature without any sort of thermal throttling. Fan noise, completely honest, you're gonna hear it under load. There's just no getting around that on mostly any single gaming laptop. If someone tells you otherwise, they're lying. When you throw your headphones on, you're not gonna notice it. It's just something that goes along with mobile gaming. As we touched on earlier, there is a control center software that lets you adjust fan profiles. You've got performance mode, balance mode, and a quieter office mode. In office mode, it's particularly quiet. The fans barely spin up, but you're not running games in office mode. For gaming, you want a performance mode and accept the fan noise as part of the deal. Battery life is very solid if you're just doing productivity tasks on this. This is a gaming laptop. You should never game on a laptop unless it's very light, like old school RuneScape or something. You always want to game while it's plugged in to the power. Don't buy a gaming laptop for a serious unplugged gaming session, but buy it for what it is, a desktop gaming replacement that just happens to be portable, not a battery life champion at all. Let me bring this back to where we first started because the whole point of this video and this laptop was the value position that it presents. The Thunderobot Radiant 16 with these specs in this economy, most of you probably would have guessed that it's actually priced a little bit higher. And that's the argument that Thunderobot is making. You get good value at a good price, and based on what I've tested, it's a legitimate one. Now, are there trade-offs? Yes. The brand doesn't have the same software ecosystem that Razer or Asus has built up. The control software center is functional, but not as polished. Build quality is good, but it's not a premium aluminum chassis, and all those are valid concerns for some people. But if you want solid frames, a very high quality display, and some serious gaming power, and you're okay buying a laptop from a brand that's newer to the US, the math works, and I think this laptop delivers. The link for the Thunderobot Radiant 16 will be in the description down below. It'll take you directly to their Amazon page where you can check out every SKU, the current price, and you can find the laptop that actually fits you. The Radiant 16 was genuinely a more interesting laptop than I had anticipated, and I think that's my honest takeaway. If you got any more questions or about a specific use case, make sure to comment them down below. Subscribe if you want to see more hardware content. I'll see you in the next one. See ya.